You know, this phrase, we still heard people say, we were born for a small loaf. It really captures something powerful. It's this idea that once ran deep in French-Canadian society. This sense of a limited destiny, right? That you were born for a small, humble life, not for these grand, sweeping ambitions. It's the exact mindset the Quiet Revolution was meant to shatter. But what happens when that slow, steady work of change just isn't happening fast enough?
Well, that's what we're diving into. We're looking at the second half of the 1960s in Quebec, a time that got the nickname Le temps de l'impatience, the time of impatience, and it's called that for a reason. See, this is the moment when all that constructive, modernizing energy from the early Quiet Revolution starts to curdle, transforming into these widespread social and political conflicts, both on the streets and deep inside the halls of power.
So, the story of this whole era, it kicks off with a massive shock. In the 1966 election, Daniel Johnson's Union Nationale, the party of the old guard, they pull off this unexpected victory against the reformist liberals. I mean, for a lot of people, this felt like a huge, terrifying step backward. There was this real, genuine fear that the entire Quiet Revolution project was about to be completely dismantled.
But here's the thing. This wasn't the same Daniel Johnson from the old Duplessis days. Not at all. His entire outlook had been radically transformed. You see, a couple of years earlier, Johnson had a massive heart attack in Paris. His own brother, a doctor, told him, look, if you want to live, you have to quit politics. Johnson chose to stay, but he did it knowing his days were probably numbered. And that brush with death, it just lit a fire under him, creating this profound new sense of urgency.
And you can hear this new attitude perfectly in his own words. He said, Quebec cannot afford to wait for another century for the rest of the country to decide to love us. So while he totally surprised everyone by continuing all the social and economic reforms of the Liberals, his number one absolute priority was now the national question. He was impatient. He wanted Quebec's place in Canada to be sorted out once and for all.
So while Johnson was getting impatient politically, there was this incredible wave of optimism sweeping the public. The ambitions of the Quiet Revolution weren't just abstract ideas anymore. You could literally see them being poured into steel and concrete, especially in Montreal, which was going through this absolutely spectacular transformation.
The whole city was basically one giant construction site. A brand new downtown was shooting up, connected by a web of modern highways. And then, in 1966, the crown jewel opened, the Montreal Metro. It was a total marvel, this beautiful blend of French engineering and Quebec skill, with incredible public art in the stations. I mean, this wasn't just a subway. It was this huge source of public pride, a powerful symbol of a modern, capable Quebec.
And the peak of all of this? Expo 67. We're talking over 50 million visitors, 50 million flocking to Montreal for this futuristic World's Fair. It was a staggering success. For 6 glorious months, Montreal was the center of the universe, and it was showing off a dynamic, modern, confident Quebec to the entire planet. The feeling was just pure euphoria. But right in the middle of this massive party, one single event happens that just flips the script entirely. During Expo 67, Quebec played host to one of the most famous leaders in the world, the President of France, General Charles de Gaulle.
So imagine this. De Gaulle is on the balcony of Montreal City Hall. There's this huge, ecstatic crowd below him, and he ends his speech with 4 little words that just set everything on fire. Vive le Québec libre! Long live free Quebec! The crowd goes absolutely wild. It created this massive diplomatic scandal that infuriated Ottawa. But for Quebec nationalists, wow, what a moment. It was this incredible validation from the leader of their mother country. The genie was officially out of the bottle.
So you can probably guess what happened next. De Gaulle's speech and this rising tide of Quebec nationalism, it triggered a huge, powerful response from Ottawa, a federalist counterforce that would soon be personified by one incredibly formidable intellectual and politician, Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
And what you get is this epic clash of titans, a battle between 2 powerful men with 2 totally opposite ideas for the future of the country. On one side, you have Johnson, arguing for equality or independence, demanding a new constitution that recognized Quebec as the homeland of one of Canada's founding peoples. And on the other, you have Trudeau, pushing for one united country, arguing that Quebecers should see themselves as Canadians first and reject any kind of special status.
And this whole conflict boils over in this one iconic moment. It's the 1968 Saint Jean Baptiste Day Parade in Montreal. Trudeau, who's now running to be prime minister, becomes the target for nationalist protesters. They start hurling bottles and rocks at the grandstand. And while everybody else is diving for cover, Trudeau, he just stands his ground, staring them down. He doesn't even flinch. That image, broadcast across the country, showed this unyielding leader who would not be intimidated. It helped him win the election the very next day.
And right after he wins, Trudeau sends a message, loud and clear. He says, "Fini les folies," the foolishness is over. And there was no mistaking what he meant. The era of giving what he saw as concessions to Quebec nationalism was done. Ottawa's stance was about to get a whole lot tougher.
Okay, so you've got this high-level political drama playing out, but that's only half the story. Down on the ground, in Quebec society, that impatience was just exploding everywhere. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was a fundamental questioning of all kinds of traditional authority, and it was transforming every single corner of society.
I mean, the speed of the change was just breathtaking. The Catholic Church, which had dominated life in Quebec for centuries, its authority just collapsed, practically overnight. Feminist groups were on the streets fighting for control over their own bodies. Trudeau's big omnibus bill kicked off a legal sexual revolution. The new public colleges, the CEGEPs, they were supposed to open up higher education, but they instantly became hotbeds of student radicalism. Even labor unions started shifting from just negotiating contracts to demanding huge political change.
And if you want to see where all these anxieties came to a head, you have to look at the Montreal suburb of Saint-Léonard. The local school board there made a ruling. Children of immigrants had to go to French schools. Why? Because something like 90% of immigrants were choosing English schools, and there was a real fear that the French character of Montreal was at risk. Well, that decision sparked boycotts and riots. And when the government stepped in with Bill 63, which guaranteed freedom of choice, well, to a lot of French-speaking Quebecers, it felt like a total betrayal.
And the reaction? It wasn't just a few angry letters. We're talking 50,000 people marching on the legislature in Quebec City to protest that bill. This was not a fringe movement. This was a massive, popular outpouring of anger and real anxiety about the future of their language in their own province.
So, all of this turmoil, all this protests and political conflict, it was bound to leave a mark, right? And it did, reshaping Quebec's political world for decades and setting the stage for even bigger confrontations to come.
And then, in this moment of almost unbelievable historical symbolism, Premier Daniel Johnson dies of a heart attack at the inauguration of the Manic 5 hydroelectric dam. I mean, the ultimate symbol of Quebec's modern ambition. His death left his whole equality or independence project completely unresolved, and it created this huge political vacuum, right when the province's impatience was hitting a boiling point.
And right into that void, new political forces started to rise. The super-charismatic René Lévesque had already bolted from the Liberals to create the Parti Québécois, which offered a clear, democratic path to sovereignty. But at the exact same time, a much more radical group, the Front de Libération du Québec, or FLQ, was ramping up its activities, and they were choosing a very different path, the path of political violence.
And let me put that into perspective for you. In just 2 years, the FLQ set off more than 60 bombs. 60! The impatience that started in political debates and social movements had now morphed into straight-up terrorism, setting the stage for the incredibly traumatic events of the 1970 October crisis.
And that leads us with a really critical question, doesn't it? By 1970, it was society in turmoil, with Ottawa digging in its heels and with bombs literally exploding in mailboxes. Was the quiet revolution even quiet anymore? Had this movement, which was born out of a desire for modernization and affirmation, become something else entirely? Something way more confrontational, more explosive, and a lot more dangerous? The time of impatience had well and truly arrived.